My name is Erik Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Erik Van Horn here with Lucas Mitchell. He's in the QSR space with 5 guys. And I want to dive into that story with him and then get some tactical, practical advice from him, like what he's doing today, owning multiple units and just bought more units of 5 guys. And we are in this uncertain, crazy time with coronavirus. We're like a little over a week into the madness of it. And I bet his stores are shut down. So let's dive into it. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Why don't we go back a little bit to the beginning? You and I were talking a little bit before we hit record. And you're an entrepreneur. So take us back to the beginning for context for everyone.
Since I was a kid, I can remember my first taste of entrepreneurship was summers mowing lawns, as I'm sure it's that way for a lot of people. My dad was a really good father figure for me in that, I paid rent for the lawnmower and I pushed that thing all over the neighborhood and bought my own gas and learned about, profit and loss and on a very, small scale. I can remember handing out flyers, knocking on doors, being the door-to-door salesman at 9 years old. The world's a different place now, but
oh yeah, you're not doing that. You're not doing that today. I remember putting a lawnmower, kind of like roping it up somehow to the back of my bike and going a couple miles away to mow somebody's lawn. It was a different world back then.
Yeah, it was.
So that was in your DNA. So how did you go from that to getting into 5 guys?
I kind of dabbled in a couple of different things. When I was in school, I was in college, I decided that really wasn't for me. So I was building websites actually with my brother, just kind of like on a freelance basis, got a few clients, did some e-commerce sites, a few little things. And I ended up leaving school, moving back home, and I started working in 5 guys to supplement my income. I had a couple siblings that worked there. And
so literally I just working at 5 guys
as a crew member. Yeah. I always tell the story to my team members that I was a fry guy. Like I worked fries 5-6 nights a week, closed the restaurant. I really was just supplementing my income because what I wanted to do at that time was build a web development company.
Yeah.
I just decided that I really enjoyed the restaurants. I was naturally good at it. Like I started to notice that I started to scale in the company pretty quickly. And drew a lot of attention from people who had been in the industry for a long time, knew what they were doing. And I got some opportunities there to grow. And so I just decided that, I could be an entrepreneur in the franchise space, specifically in restaurants.
Like, what did they notice? And I'm sure you looking back, you're like, oh, I can see how they noticed that. Like, what was it about you and what you did or saw or how you behaved that was different than the average person?
I think that if you were to ask some people from back then, they would probably say I'm naturally a leader. Like I'm not the guy in the room that's usually going to defer to other people. I listen and I like to take feedback, but I'm normally the kind of guy that, if there's a group of people that don't know each other, I'll naturally kind of grab everybody and try to bring them together. I would say natural leadership. And I was a self-starter from the standpoint of I never waited to be taught anything. It's like when I was ready, I was trying to figure it out, and so I think those are probably 2 traits that they latched onto and said, hey, this guy's got what it takes to run restaurants, right? And I think that those would be the 2 primary things.
So then people kind of notice that. And then when did you start to think bigger than just flipping fries? Flipping burgers. What do you do with fries? You don't flip fries, do you?
Yeah, no, you shake them.
Shake them.
Shake the fries.
Yeah.
So I think that it was probably, I was asked several times to manage a restaurant. And I was still doing the web development thing. And so I was like, no, I don't want to commit to that. By the 3rd time I committed, and like almost instantly I was on a path to running multiple units. And I think that's where it kind of clicked for me, where I was like, oh, wait a second, there's something here.
Yep.
maybe I'm going down the wrong path with web development, because I wouldn't say I'm necessarily passionate about specifically restaurants. I enjoy it, or specifically web development. I'm really
Mhm.
passionate about business. And so I was like, maybe this is where my natural skill set is, that I could take this and run with it.
So then where did that go? Where did it go from there? Like, how did you actually get the opportunity? So walk us into the deal, because I think this is really interesting for people that want to be a franchisee, but maybe they don't have the capital, or maybe they are working for somebody as a manager, district operation manager, or maybe they're shaking fries and flipping burgers right now. So I think this is a really interesting conversation, because I've seen people work their way up within an organization and become a multi-unit, multi-brand franchise owner. So like, get tactical with us on how that actually happened.
I started running multiple units, and I decided I can do this for myself. I want to do this for myself. And so I started asking around inside the brand, regional district managers, anyone I could really talk to inside the brand on the operations side, to say, hey, I want to do this. I had built a good reputation. I think that was number one with the franchisor,
Mm-hmm.
as a multi-unit operator, being like, this guy knows what he's doing. And so then I started kind of using that leverage to ask around inside the brand and say, hey, I want to do this. And how do we do it?
Did the owners know that you were doing that?
No.
The guy that I'm thinking of that used to be my district operational manager, we didn't know about it at first either. We kind of assumed, like, we're thinking he's really smart, he's really good, he's got the ownership mentality, he'll probably own at some point, but we didn't know either, which is fine. But just wanted to kind of, like I said, we're getting tactical here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that if I was to do it over again, hindsight's 2020, right? But I think that I would have felt more comfortable bringing the ownership group, and actually maybe even use them as partners
Yep.
doing the first one. But back then, I was in a position where I was really fearful of, the consequences if I
Yep.
wasn't able to make it happen, and I definitely lived in a little bit of fear. So no, I kept it to myself, and I just talked to people inside of the brand that I had a lot of confidence in. And then I got the name of some franchisees, and I started calling them, just cold calling them. And I had no capital behind me. I was just like, I want to figure this out, right? Like, just going for it. Ended up getting in touch with a franchisee in Arizona. Went down. I lived in Las Vegas at the time. Went down, met with him, and I basically put on the table that, hey, I know some people. I'd been dabbling in the real estate space at the time and met some people with some money. I'm an operator currently. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but if you'll work
Mm-hmm.
with me, then I can figure it out. And he was in no rush to sell either, which I think helped the situation.
Yeah.
And he was willing to work with me, and that's kind of where it started. Then I kind of found a deal.
Now tell us about the deal. How'd you find the deal?
I just called the franchisees and met with him, talked through the numbers. He kind of gave a ballpark of, this is what I think my restaurants are worth. Kind of started there. Obviously, I was like, I don't think that's what they're worth. But I said, let's use that as a starting point, right? I knew at this point I didn't really have a lot of leverage,
Yeah.
because here I am going, honest with this guy, saying, I don't know how I'm going to buy these things, but I want to, right? I just said, hey, yeah, I think if we can make something work around that, and you'll work with me on the timeline, let's see if we can figure it out. And so that's where it started. And then I left that meeting and I said, well, shoot, now I got to figure out how I'm going to do this, right? So next step, the let's figure this out phase. Again, no idea where I was even going to start.
Did you have a bunch of family money that was ready to put into it?
No. So actually, my family, I don't come from money. I have 5 brothers and sisters. My dad's been in sales his whole life. He's a phenomenal salesman. We moved all over the country. I can remember times when we had plenty, and I can remember times when we ate rice and beans and
Mm-hmm.
pancakes every meal, months on end, because he was a commission guy, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't actually come from money. I didn't have family that I knew I was immediately going to go to. And yeah, so I did know some people. Like I said, I was starting to dabble in the real estate space. Those were kind of my contacts at that point, where maybe they'll be interested in the franchise space. For everyone out there thinking that, a lot of times they're not. That was my experience.
Yeah.
They're real estate. That's what they're into, right?
Yeah. Go into the actual purchase. Like, go transit just real quick from like wanting to buy it to now you own it, and what do you own and what does it look like?
Okay, so wanted to buy it. Long story short, ended up putting together some friends and family investment combined with an SBA loan to buy the businesses. I think at first there were 3 or 4 partners. I have one primary backer who, the funny story is actually now he's my father-in-law. At the time,
Did you know he's going to be your father-in-law?
I was hoping. And so the funny story behind that is actually that I went to him I had a pitch, I had a deck ready, right? And I was presenting it to these real estate people, and I kept getting rejected essentially. And so I went to him for feedback. He had a management consulting business on my deck. And when he got to looking at it, he was like, actually, maybe we should look at this a little bit closer. That's kind of how that started to happen.
That's classic. That's a classic. Give me some advice. I'm thinking about doing this. And really, they're the buyer.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I seriously had zero expectation of that being the case at the time.
Yeah.
If you hear him tell the story too, he's kind of like, wait, how did we end up here? It's a really funny, it's really kind of funny dynamic. But that he ended up being the lead investor, and then we brought in a couple other partners as well. So we bought the business, combined it with an SBA loan, and then we started growing the 5 units. Again, we grew key performance indicators, customer satisfaction went up, our mystery shopper scores went up, all of our operational indicators went up, and then sales started to grow. And so we got a taste of it, and we started to want to do more. And so we started talking to bankers, and again, just trying to find deals, right? Franchise brokers, franchise resales. I think primarily our strategy is we like to buy some existing units with some development rights. Buy an income stream, use the income stream to develop. And so we started talking to other people, and yeah, this last deal came together. It was interesting. I think we thought this deal was going to fall apart probably 5 or 6 times. Again, we didn't have any additional equity to bring into the table, so it really was we were trying to recapitalize and bring in as little outside equity as we could, and found a lending partner that was willing to go down the road with us, and we closed on those in October. Now we're doing the same thing. We're repeating the process from the 5 initial stores, right? Trying to improve all the performance indicators, grow the revenue.
Where are these stores located? Part of the country?
So we have 5 in rural Arizona. So these stores are all an hour and a half minimum apart from each other. One store is 4 hours away from where I live, and another one's like 3.5, and they're all spread out. And then we have the 8 that we just purchased are in the Bay Area.
So very different. I mean, very different marketplaces. So let's talk about some of the things that you've learned, the challenges within that. I mean, because a lot of people that listen here, and I know that you listen to the podcast and you're part of the Franchise Tribe Facebook group. What big things have you learned having, let's not get into the Bay Area right now, but just having multiple locations far apart?
So the first thing I learned was how to create true leaders and managers in the restaurants. My background was managing in an area where I could hit all 8 stores I was managing in a day if I wanted to, right? To now, a lot less presence. I put 40,000 miles on my car the first year, traveling between restaurants, trying to get everybody up to speed. But then after that, once we got to that point, it was like you could really remote manage, right? And so I think I learned how to find the right people and the right personalities, and some people that could take in the store and really be accountable for their results. And that was a big challenge for the first 6 months to a year. I probably held on to the wrong people a little bit too long.
How do you find the good people? Like, what is it that you're looking for in the good people?
I think I'm looking for personality and attitude first, and skill set secondary. So a lot of our management team now, not a lot, I'd say 2 or 3 of them were already in the company when we bought it, and they were just in the wrong seat, right?
Yeah.
So like you have maybe a shift leader who, hey, this guy's got the attitude and the personality to really own this store and own his results. And maybe the general manager should be the shift leader, right? So there's like some reversals of roles, I think, especially in the QSR space. A lot of operators prioritize speed and hustle over quality and sincerity and, the true passion for serving the customer.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people end up in the wrong places for that reason. It's like whoever's the fastest at doing everything gets the promotion. And I'm like, no, whoever's the best leader gets the promotion. And so I think that is definitely, it took me a while to learn that though, if I'm being honest. It's like, I definitely held on to a couple people for too long, and it slowed down our progress.
Well, I think it's interesting the right people in the right positions, because a lot of times we just, for me, I think it's easy to think it's the wrong person, but it might just be the wrong position. And so give me an example of that. Like, give me an example of someone that was the wrong person, or maybe it's the right person for your organization, but they were in the wrong position within your organization.
Yeah, so I have he's a manager now at one of our restaurants, general manager. And when we originally acquired the restaurants, he was a shift leader working under another general manager. And that store, the culture was very much like people trying to undermine each other to get ahead. Like, they thought that if they, by bringing other people down, it would make them look better. And that culture existed there for a long time. And I noticed it right away. So I spent a lot of time with the team up there, and I noticed there was one shift leader who was never really involved in any
Yeah.
of that. It was like everyone else's names always came up, but this one person didn't. So I started looking at them a little bit closer, and I realized that they were the quiet, humble leader who people kind of naturally gravitated towards just because of the way that they were, without them having to try to put themselves on a pedestal or bring other people down. And so now they're general manager. And I also at that same time realized that I replaced crew members and shift managers at that store, and the problem never got better. And so that's one example of holding on to the wrong person. It started at the top, right? Normally, I'd say probably 90% of the time it starts with the highest leader in the store.
Are any of your investors operational at all with you, and how often do you communicate with them?
So my primary investor, my father-in-law, he's a decision maker along with me. He's
Okay.
not necessarily involved in the day-to-day operations. So again, we discuss a lot of strategy, growth, and a lot of high-level decisions. And then day-to-day stuff it just all pretty much falls on me. And all the other investors are silent.
So let's talk about investors, because a lot, I think so context, we are just basically a little over a week into the coronavirus. All your restaurants, I'm assuming, are shut down.
Takeout and delivery only.
Takeout and delivery, and they may be, so there are people coming inside. It's not happening. And so different business environment, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity coming up. And I think a lot of people understand that. There's always opportunity. There's always a silver lining. But if you're not capitalized, you can't take advantage of that. So I think there's going to be some smart franchisees that are good operators that have opportunity to buy more, but they don't have the net worth. They don't have the liquidity to be able to do it. But there are investors right now, and I know it because they keep reaching out to me and saying, Erik, I want to put money into the franchises once this thing kind of settles down, and they're wanting to invest. And I'm one of those investors. I want to put more money out. What advice would you have for somebody that's looking for investors? Like, how would you structure a deal?
Neither one of our deals were structured the same way. And I've talked with other investors. We've tried to structure deals. So essentially, I think first what it comes down to is aligning yourself with the investor in terms of what do they want out of the deal? What do you want out of the deal, right? Who's going to have decision-making power? Who wants influence versus who wants to make a return on their investment? And what are you willing to go for that? So really understanding that dynamic.
Yep.
And then kind of structuring the deal around that. I've tried to use a basic template kind of thing that I've learned from other people, and it basically it never goes as well as just first trying to align on what objectives are, right?
Yep.
It's like, do you want control of the company? Do you want a minority stake in the company? How big of a piece do you want? Are you dabbling? And then for me, it comes down to really why I want to be an entrepreneur in the first place, right? Freedom to make decisions, control my time, and then get results, right? And so and then obviously be compensated fairly for what that is. So I would say that that's probably number one, is really aligning yourself with an investor and finding the right investor that's the right partner for you. I've talked with private equity groups. I've talked with individual investors, family office people, and no, I haven't necessarily been able to align myself with any one individual except for our current partners, and we brought in one additional partner on the last round as well. But I would say that aligning yourself and being willing to say, I want to do this for these reasons, and if I can't make it work with a financial backer, then it's not worth it for me to go down this route. And then the same thing for the financial partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Realizing that I want the right person who's gonna achieve my goals financially and my goals for the investment, and then also be willing to give something up in exchange for that.
Yep.
And aligning on those kinds of things, I think, is really important first.
Hey, it's Erik here. I hear from a lot of people that they're looking to buy their first brand or maybe their second or third brand, and they're not sure where to start, or they're not sure if they're looking in the right places. Well, that's where I come in. I help people find really good brands. And if you're thinking about your second or third, or maybe your first brand, let's set up a time to talk. You can go to talkwitheric.com. That's ERIK, talkwitheric.com. Now back to the show. What are the reasons you wouldn't want to take on a family office or private equity or an investor? Like, what are some of those things that don't align with you personally?
So first thing I would say is limiting my ability to do other things. And I say that in a way of, I think that one of my really strong skill sets is I can create an infrastructure that can manage most of the day-to-day for me. And I can oversee those people and oversee results. But my leadership style is very much duplicate myself to the best of my ability and create somebody who pays attention to the details as well as I do, and can do all of these day-to-day operational, take all the phone calls and handle things, and isn't afraid to make decisions, and then allowing them to make some mistakes, and then helping them learn and grow from that, and to the point where over time, it requires a lot less of my time. And so at that point, I want the freedom to do something else, right? You're an entrepreneur, Erik, as well as I do. It's like, I want to create a system, I want to get it running, and I want to go on to something else that interests me.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just not somebody that doesn't want me monopolized by managing only their investment on their behalf, and I can't do anything else with my time.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. What are you looking at in the future? Are you going to double down with Five Guys, or are you going to look at some other opportunities?
I like the idea of being in multiple brands. I have this vision of potentially being in different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the reason why I stuck with Five Guys originally was I knew how to run the restaurants.
Yeah.
Right? I had been doing that, and I was like, I need to learn how to run a business. And so I don't want to have to also learn how to run restaurants. Like,
Yeah.
I run a different concept. I want to just take what I know and then focus on what I don't know and get better at that. And as I get better at the business side of it, I could see myself going into other brands or potentially even other spaces. I've thought about either service based or I've thought about, like, I'm really passionate about music, so I've thought about music schools or something like that down the road. Yeah, I think multiple concepts eventually.
So what's a day in the life like for you? You've got 13 restaurants now, 2 different demographics. And what's your ownership? What's the management structure like? It's you, and then who else? And then what's a day in the life like?
I have me, and then I have an area manager in California, and now I have an area manager in Arizona. Actually just got promoted right before this whole coronavirus thing happened. So that's been interesting to watch that relationship build with our managers at the same time that, we're going through this insane level of management that they're not accustomed to, but it's been good. So I have an area manager, and then we also have a company trainer that's based in California that primarily right now is focused on California because we're trying to build and grow those stores. But eventually we'll probably be a trainer for across all of our Five Guys restaurants to help us.
Was that acquisition like underperforming assets, or was it like, were you just buying at a strong multiple of cash flow, or what?
We bought at a pretty strong multiple of cash flow, but I would also say that there's capital expenditures coming up in the next 4 years. So we got a discounted multiple for the capital expenditures coming up to refresh. The market was, for the most part, stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it wasn't underperforming. They have a couple underperforming locations.
Yeah.
but I knew that there was a lot more potential. So from a standpoint of how are they doing on Five Guys key performance indicators, they were stabilized.
Yeah.
How are they
As a
doing
whole, as a
as a
group.
whole, with a couple underperformers? How are they doing on terms of what I thought the potential was? They were underperforming.
Yeah.
And so that's where I found the opportunity.
Yeah. And again, with a lot, do you see a lot of, I think we're going to go into a time where there's a lot of trading, franchisees wanting to get out after the virus kind of, hysteria kind of subsides. And there's going to be franchisees that are going to want to double down. And it's all going to, a lot of that's going to happen internally. Do you see a lot of internal stuff at Five Guys, or do you see outsiders coming in to buy some of these?
I think there's outsiders coming in. I also see a lot of stuff internally. I think
Mm-hmm.
fast casual QSR as a whole, kind of the theme around the industry has been that there was a really big boom cycle. I mean, I'm sure there was in franchising in general, but specifically in QSR
Yeah.
and fast casual, where a lot of money entered the system at the same time. And a lot of those franchisees are coming up on 10 years or 15-year terms, and they're having to renew, and the franchisors are wanting to invest a bunch more capital into their units, and they've ridden the gravy train for the last 10 years, right? And they're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't want to put a bunch of money back into this. So we're starting to see more of them come up from that perspective. And then you also have, you do have a lot of private equity backed franchisees now as well that have a lot of capital to deploy, and they're trying to, consolidate units as well.
Talk to me about that, because I see private equity in some of the fitness concepts and some other concepts out there. I see it a lot in fast casual. What is attractive to private equity in fast casual?
I would think unit growth,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think
Yeah.
that they see a lot of room for unit growth, and sometimes you see them buying at ridiculous multiples just because they think they can buy down their multiple by adding units.
Yep.
So I think that there's a lot of white space in a lot of brands. Specifically, I think now in kind of what I would consider the medium sized fast casual concept. So Five Guys would be one. We're talking not 10,000 units. We're talking 15, 1,600 units down
Yeah.
to 600, 800 units. They're seeing a lot of white space. And so I think that's attractive to them for unit growth. There's multiple things, but I think there's an efficiency that comes with fast casual and QSR specifically compared to casual dining that, operationally it's less of a headache, and it's easier to replicate and to scale. And so I think they're seeing a lot of advantages for that too.
What other franchises do some of your fellow Five Guys franchisees own? Is it mostly other fast casuals, or do they own like some service and some other things as well?
Honestly, most of the ones I know, they own other fast casual. So I
Mm-hmm.
know some franchisees that own some Zaxby's.
Mm-hmm.
I know some that own Jimmy John's, or no, Jersey Mike's.
Mm-hmm.
I know some that own Wingstop. So I think they're mostly, from what I can see at least, they're staying in the sector.
What about you? Like, if you go in, what is it that makes it easy for you to go to stay in fast casual? Is it just because is it pretty easy to go from brand to brand, or are there big differences between a Jersey Mike's and a Five Guys?
So I think that there are big differences between a Popeyes or some big drive-through concept
Mm-hmm.
like a Taco Bell
Yeah.
or something in a Five Guys. I think there are big differences. The priority is on speed. You have, limited time offers all the time, so your menu is constantly changing. I think brands like Five Guys and Jersey Mike's are more similar in that they're really focused on the quality of their food and
Yeah.
the quality of their experience in an efficient, timely manner, but it's not,
Yeah.
the focus is different, right? And so I think that your priority, for example, one of the reasons I like Five Guys is we're very centric on what we do, and we
Mm-hmm.
try really, really hard to do it really well. And there's no distractions by menus constantly changing, different things like that. So you're really able to just hone in on the basics, which in my opinion makes it easier to scale. And so Jersey Mike's, Wingstop, a lot of those brands are similar in that nature.
What are some of the things that customers love about Five Guys? I know my girls love it. I like Five Guys. And, it's like, what are the things like do customers love, and how intentional are you and Five Guys at making sure that customers love whatever you're about to say?
First off, we do our product really, really well. And I don't want to speak on behalf of Five Guys, but if you were to talk to anyone in the family, the focus has always been on delivering the absolute best product that we can. So we use the most expensive ingredients, like in the burger space, we hand press our meat, all those things you hear Five Guys talk about, right? And so we don't have a freezer in the whole building. You'll see it put plastered on the signs in the restaurant, right? Nothing's ever frozen. I think that's what customers have really grown to expect, is just a really, really great product. And then secondly, our customer service is just, we default to taking care of the customer. A lot of people are worried about getting scammed, or, oh, I got to give away free food, or this person's coming 7 times and said the same thing. And we pay attention to that stuff, but we're really just like, I don't want to risk losing an actual customer, right? We want to have phenomenal customer service. I think those two things, and I think we do them really well.
What are the things that you see Five Guys corporate, the franchisor, doing really well right now as we're dealing with coronavirus? Like, what are you just like really impressed that they're doing?
They're sharing information. So they have a bunch of company-owned stores, and they're sharing resources. Like we're all dealing with landlords right now, right? I've seen stuff on the franchise tribe, just everybody going crazy about how to deal with landlords. They have company-owned stores. They're also dealing with landlords. How they're handling the landlords, they're sharing the information with us. They've been very, I don't want to say hands-off, because that's like a word that you don't want to use in Five Guys. Like, they're very involved. They care a lot about their brand, which is really important to me as a franchisee. But I would say that they've given freedom to operate in this time where franchisees need to be extremely prudent to the franchisees, and said, your markets and your stores better than we do. Here's a set of guidelines. Now tailor it to your store. Make your store run well. Execute.
That's great. I love that, because I know one franchise, and there are multiple franchises that have basically made the decision for their franchisees what they're doing. And some of these decisions, hindsight's 2020, but it was the absolute wrong decision to make. And it has a lasting impact on the franchisees in that system, because the franchisor made the decision for them. And so I like it when a franchisor gives the guidelines, and especially in times like this, because franchisees do, not all of them, there can be franchisees that make mistakes with that, but you need to trust your franchisees to be able to do the right thing. And if most of them do the right thing, because like you said, they know their market, and your markets are different. How different are your two markets?
Oh, they're very different.
Night and day.
Right. Yeah. We're dealing in California. You have really high population density in the Bay Area, a lot of daytime employees, like office buildings. It's Silicon Valley, so you're dealing with a lot of people that are there. I think that in Arizona, we're dealing with a lot more regular customers. In some cities, regular customers. We have, in some cases, an older population, an older demographic. And then in some, we have a university in one of the towns. And so you're dealing with college students. And so each one kind of has their own unique dynamic. But yeah, the Bay Area specifically is very different in that it's very busy, right? It's constantly busy. There's constant movement. And the Arizona stores are a little bit slower paced. Sales wise, we have some stores do really well in Arizona. We have some stores that do really well in California, but the way that they do it is different.
I think anybody that has multiple units, I had 12 salons and solo salons in Orange County, and they weren't, we had some that were just, not very good. And we had some that it's like you couldn't do anything to screw them up. They were always good. Like you could try to do something to screw it up, and it's like, it was always awesome. I'm sure you have some stuff like that, where like customers will come in no matter what. And then other ones are difficult to get to the profitability like the other ones are. And then when you go and buy stuff, typically you're not just, when someone's selling a group of franchises, they're just not selling a bunch of winners. There's probably a dog or two in there as well. So what do you focus on? Do you focus on just making the better ones, the great ones better, or like getting the dogs up a little bit? Like what's like as an owner globally, how do you view that?
I think it depends on what I see in the potential of the store. So, like, I can use one of the Bay Area stores for an example. We walked in to tour that store before we bought it. And the first thing I realized was there's a Chipotle and a Panda Express and how busy they were compared to how busy we were. And I said, all
Mm.
right, this is operational.
Yeah.
Typically, I mean, Chipotle is a great brand, Panda Express is a great brand, but traditionally, Five Guys is listed with those great brands
Yep.
as well. So, why is there so much disparity, right? And so I noticed that right away. And so I said, this is operational. We want to put some resources in here. Other ones are locations. When we bought the Arizona market, we have a store in a small town that's a lot of pass through traffic, tons of traffic on the streets, but it's passing through to another city. It's not a destination. We don't have drive-throughs. So that store, I
Mm.
realized we could do some operational things, but it just wasn't the right location for that store. And so that one, again, I'm going to put a little less resources into trying to, I can only increase the volume of that store
Yeah.
so much compared to the one that's obviously operational,
Yeah.
you know.
And what do you do with something like that? Because I mean, it's not cheap to build these things out. You just wait till the lease terms up on. I know this is just in general. Like, what would you do on something like that? Wait till the lease terms up and then look at relocating.
I think it depends on your lease. And we're trying to run some of these analysis right now, right? I mean, we have
Mm-hmm.
13 stores and they're not all winners by any means. We have really good stores, but we have a
Yeah.
couple that aren't. And so looking at the lease terms, right? How much time is left on the lease? Do you think the landlord can easily release the
Yep.
space? A lot of those different factors would go into the decision of, or is it, if you're about break even, is it worth having this huge cost to get out of the lease to move it, or do you just want to try to operate at break even, or lose a little bit each month as opposed to this large capital expenditure of buying your way out of the lease, or risk going to court, or
Mm-hmm.
all those things. So I think honestly, we're still trying to figure some of that out. What we
Yeah.
want to do with some of those sites.
I think what's interesting in this conversation, I mean, you're part of a very well known brand that a lot of people love, and you've grown to 13 locations and you've done it kind of organically. And like I think I wanted to bring to the point, there's some that are underperformers and some that are top performers, and that's just the way it goes. So as a franchisee, if you think you're always going, just because you're a top performer operator, doesn't mean all your stores are always going to be top performing stores, because there's things that are in and out of your controls. We are definitely learning now that are going to impact performance. And all you can do is react to that and make good decisions. So you're not throwing money at a bad store that's really not going to change. But you have to be okay with that. And I never really, I was always wanting just really good stores all the time in my businesses. But, as I went through that with Sola, and I'm like, you know what? Same ownership group, same, we're doing everything the same. And I have some that are just great and some that are not so great. And that's just business once you start to grow. And I think for everybody out there thinking about buying a franchise, if you're just validating, if you had 13 stores, or for me with 12 Solas, if they were all owned individually and I own the dog, you're going to think the franchise is a dog. Or if you just talk to me about my number one store, like the franchise could do no wrong. So I think it's just important for people, anyone out there that's thinking about buying a franchise, you really need to get a cross section and talk to owners like us that have a way of looking at it that's not emotional. We can just actually talk to you about what's going on from a business standpoint and not get too emotional about it. What else? Anything else that you think the audience should know right now, whether it's the times that we're in or just things from your experience? What would you like to share?
I just kind of following up on what you just said. I think that's the beautiful thing about multiple units too,
Mm-hmm.
is that, I could share a story. I know a partner of mine now, but he worked for me for a long time and we worked together for a long time. He owned a Hungry Howie's franchise. And it was right before the recession, bought it from a guy who was really, really connected with his religious community. Didn't just kind of went into it. He had been a pizza guy for a long time and was like, hey, I'm going to go do this. And as soon as they sold the business, I mean, there were some things, I don't know the whole story, right? But might not necessarily been totally on the up and up. But as
Yep.
soon as he sold the business, we went into recession time. The guy's community left. his sales decreased and he really struggled. And him and I have talked about several times the beautiful thing about multiple units. And that if I'm going in to buy or build to develop, let's say 10 units, or to buy 5 units and develop 5 more, is I know that there's the existing owner of those units is not so connected with his community that everything, all the sales revolve around that one person, right?
Yep.
A lot of it is more just the brand and awareness and customer service they provide, et cetera, but it's not directly tied to that person or to any one specific thing. Like you mentioned, a great corner location that's like anyone would pay you $1 million to get you to give them your lease, right? Like
Yep.
it's what to very specific things. It's generalized. No, the success of this company as a whole is based on the fact that they've done things right. The brand is good. And there's going to be a couple bad locations, but you're going to have a couple home runs
Yep.
that are going to help offset those bad locations. And so that's something that I've definitely learned is they're going to be there, like you said. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about multiple units is that you can offset that risk by, spreading it out across a bigger spread.
Yep. And then you get into multiple brands and you even spread it even more, which comes with its own set of challenges if they're too different and you think they're very much the same. And you have a good handle on that within the fast casual space. But, going into a service-based brand, and which is what I'm getting into, I have a roofing franchisor that I'm getting ready to launch here in the next couple months. But, people going from fast casual into a roofing brand, it's very diversified, but it's very, very different. But it's nice once you can get into multiple brands as well. This has been good. I've enjoyed this conversation because I haven't really had a chance. I know one of the former Five Guys franchisee, and had some good conversations with him to understand it. But I was excited to get you on and get to know you a little bit, and appreciate what you brought to the audience today. So, anything else that you want to add before I let you go?
No, I just want to say thanks, Erik, for everything that you're putting out there too, especially during this time. Everybody in the franchise space is going through, it seems like. There's a few that are pretty shielded from it, but very few. And so, just the amount of value that you're putting in. And if anybody ever thinks I have any bit of wisdom that I can share with them, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody too and be a resource as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. You're in the Franchise Tribe Facebook group. So anyone that's a franchisee, just go to franchisetribe.com and you'll get in there and you'll be able to chat with all of us. It's getting to be a pretty active group, which I'm pretty excited about. We're all there to help each other. So thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Erik.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.